In this lecture, we will discuss a very important poem written by John Keats, and the name of that poem is Ode to a Nightingale. But before we discuss the poem Ode to a Nightingale, you must know a little bit about the poet John Keats. John Keats, he belongs to the Romantic age, and he was born in 1795 and he died in 1821. First of all, we will discuss a little bit about John Keats' life and his style of writing. John Keats is quite famous in English literature as a master of odes. He is the greatest writer of odes. Odes is a type of poem which is always addressed to a person or thing. For example, this ode to a nightingale, it is addressed to Nightingale. Secondly, the theme of an ode is universal. It has a universal theme. For example, the theme of Ode to a Nightingale is permanence of art and a transitoriness of human life and beauty. That human life and beauty, they are short-lived, whereas art is permanent. Now, this is the theme which applies to the whole world. Third, an ode is serious, so our Ode to a Nightingale is also serious. So, Ode to a Nightingale is an excellent example of ode. And John Keats is a famous writer of odes because he has written a number of wonderful odes such as Ode to a Nightingale, Ode on Grecian, Ode to Melancholy, Ode to Autumn, and then Ode to Psyche. He has written a number of wonderful odes. Secondly, John Keats is famous for his sensuousness. So he's a master of sensuousness. And whenever you prepare for John Keats, these are the two most important questions for each and every exam. One is John Keats as a master of odes, and the second most important question is John Keats as a master of sensuousness. Because whenever anybody reads John Keats' poetry, so his all five senses are satisfied. We have five senses, and John Keats' poem, it satisfies of all the five senses, and that's why he is a master of sensuousness. Why? Because John Keats, he had been a great lover of beauty. According to him, a poem should be written for enjoyment and for beauty, not to convey any moral lesson and not to deal with the real problems of the society. And that's why John Keats is quite different to his contemporary poet P.B. Shelley. P.B. Shelley also belongs to the Romantic age, but he was you can say that revolutionary poet. He dealt with the problems of Romantic age through his poems. But John Keats, he doesn't deal with any problem of his society. He writes poems for enjoyment and for beauty, and that's why he's a great lover of beauty. And he believes in the philosophy of art for art's sake. What is the meaning of art for art's sake? That a work of art should be written for enjoyment, for beauty, and not to convey moral lesson. And a work of art should not deal with the problems of the real society. Now, another important feature about John Keats' poetry is that he is a Hellenic poet. This is the third most important question if you prepare for any for any exam. One, master of art; second, sensuousness; and third, John Keats is a Hellenic poet. What is the meaning of Hellenic poet? Means John Keats as a Greek poet. No doubt John Keats belongs to Britain, but John Keats was highly influenced by Greek art, literature, and culture. And that's why in his each and every poems, he uses words from Greek literature. He uses myths from Greek literature. So his each and every poem is full of Greek myths, Greek characters, Greek words, Greek legends. And that's why John Keats is also known as a Hellenic poet. So this is another important feature of John Keats' poetry you must remember, and this is the third most important question as far as John Keats is concerned. Now we will talk about some of the famous poems written by John Keats one by one. But you must know these poems. We are not going to talk about these poems in detail. I will just mention the names of these poems. These poems are Endymion, Isabella, Hyperion, Lamia, The Eve of Saint Agnes. So these are some of the important poems written by John Keats, which are very long poems. So I don't want to talk about these poems in detail in this lecture, because our concentration is on Ode to a Nightingale, which is one of the most important odes written by John Keats. So ode, I have already informed you the meaning of ode and the features of ode. So directly we are going to talk about this poem. So this poem, Ode to a Nightingale, is divided into 8 stanzas, and each and every stanza contains 10 lines. So overall in this poem, there are 80 lines. Now that is John Keats, the longest ode. As I have informed you that John Keats has written 6 wonderful songs: Ode to a Nightingale, Ode on Gratian, Ode to Autumn, Ode to Melancholy, Ode on Indolence, Ode to Psyche. So out of all the 6 odes, which are really very famous, Ode to Nightingale is the longest ode. And what's the theme of Ode to a Nightingale? Oath, John Keats, he talks about the permanence of art and transitoriness of human life and beauty. John Keats, he conveys the theme that art is permanent, whereas human life and beauty, they are short-lived, they are temporary. And Ode to a Nightingale is also John Keats' personal ode. Why? Because in some of the lines, John Keats, he talks about the death of his brother Tom. So that is also a personal ode, because he talks about the death of his brother Tom in this ode. So now we are going to talk about stanza by stanza. We will discuss each and every stanza of this poem in detail, because it is one of the most important odes written by John Keats. Now, first, in the first stanza, the poet feels overjoyed in Nightingale's song. Actually, John Keats, he hears the Nightingale song. So after hearing the Nightingale song, what does happen to John Keats is described in this poem. But first of all, in the first stanza, the poet, means John Keats, he feels overjoyed, he feels rapture on hearing the Nightingale song. Now, what does John Keats say? My heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains. 1 minute past, lethe words had sunk. Now try to understand these 4 lines. John Keats says that after listening the Nightingale's song, an ache has started in his heart, and his complete body has gone numb. His complete body has gone numb, and that's why he is also feeling pain in his body. So, what is the meaning of first line? He says that after hearing the Nightingale song, an ache has started in his heart, and his complete body has gone numb, and he is also feeling pain. Means his body is giving some type of pain, or he is feeling pain. Now he compares this state. He says that he is feeling at this time like as he had drunk hemlock. Do you know what is hemlock? Hemlock is a type of poison. So he says that he is feeling similar to as if he had drunk poison, and he is feeling the same effect on his body. So my sense as though of hemlock I had drunk. So he says that he is feeling the same as if he had taken poison. So like similarly, he is feeling ache in his heart, and his body has got numb. And what does he says in the next line? Or emptied some dull opiate. Opiate means drug to the drains. 1 minute past. Lethe words had sunk. Now, in the third line, he says that he is feeling as if taken, he has taken a drug. So he in the third line he says that he is feeling as if he has taken a drug, and after taking that drug he has forgotten each and everything, because in the fourth line there is the term lethe. Now, Lethe is in Greek mythology, because I informed you at the beginning of this lecture that John Keats, he had been a great lover of Greek art and literature. So Lethe is a river in the underworld, and anybody who drinks the water of Lethe, that person forgets each and everything. And that's why he says that in the third line, he says that he is feeling the same ache in his heart. His body has gone numb, as if he has taken some drug and he has forgotten each and everything. So that's the meaning of these first four lines. So he is talking about his condition. Now, what does he says in the next line? It's not through envy of the happy Lord, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou, light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot, a beechen green and shadow numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. Now try to understand what is the meaning of these six lines. Now, John Keats, he tells the nightingale, it's not through envy of thy happy lot. Envy means jealousy, I mean your. But being too happy in thine happiness, he tells the nightingale that he is feeling pain in his heart. His body has gone numb. He is not feeling it. It is not because of his jealousy for the nightingale's song. He says that he is feeling this sensation, this all this in his body. It is not because of his jealousy for the nightingale's song. Rather, he is feeling pain in his heart. His body has gone numb. Why? Because of too much happiness in his nightingale's song. He says that the nightingale is singing so sweetly, and by listening to that song, by hearing that song, he has got overjoy, and due to that overjoy, an act has started in his heart. And this happens sometimes in our real life also, when we are so happy or when we start laughing loudly. So all of a sudden feels that an ache starts in our heart. So he is feeling the same thing. He is telling the nightingale in the fifth line, he tells the nightingale that he is feeling pain in his heart, not because of jealousy for the nightingale song. In the sixth line, he says that he is feeling pain in his heart. Why? Because he is too happy after hearing the nightingale song, that he is getting so much joy on hearing the nightingale song, that an ache, a pain has started in his heart. Now, what does he says in the next four lines? That thou light-winged dryad of the trees in some melodious plot, of beechen green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. Now John Keats tell that it is the season of summer. He says that he is writing this poem in summer. So what does he say? That thou meaning you, light-winged dryad of the trees. Now, again, dryad, it is a mythological word. It is a Greek word, because in his poem, after each and every time, he uses the Greek word, Greek legend. So dryad is a Greek legend in Greek literature. Actually, dryad is considered a female spirit who lives in the trees. And that's why John Keats, he calls the nightingale dryad. Why he calls the nightingale dryad, or why does he compare nightingale to dryad? Because like dryad, nightingale also lives in the tree. Nightingale also sits in the trees. कहते हैं ना, that thou light winged dryad of the trees. He calls nightingale a dryad. He compares nightingale to a female spirit. Why? Because according to John Keats, like dryad, nightingale also lives in the forest, and that's why he calls the nightingale dryad. He also calls the nightingale light-winged, because nightingale has light wing, and the nightingale sits in the trees, lives in the trees, and that's why he calls nightingale dryad. You must remember this line. Now, what does he say? In some melodious plot of beechen green. Now, beechen green means beech tree. Now John Keats says that the nightingale he is talking about is sitting in the beech green. The nightingale he is talking about is sitting in the beech tree. He says that the nightingale is sitting in the beech tree and the nightingale is singing a sweet song. And due to that sweet song, here plot stand for place. Due to that sweet song, the place where the nightingale is sitting and singing has gone melodious. Melodious means sweet. So he says that the nightingale is sitting in the peach tree. The nightingale is singing a very sweet song. Nightingale is singing a very sweet song. And due to that sweet song, the whole place has gone sweet. The whole place has gone filled with sweet voice. And that's why he says, in some melodious plot of beechen greens and shadows numberless. Here he is talking about the forest, that the nightingale is sitting in the forest. He is sitting, so she is sitting, not he actually, she is sitting in the beech tree and she is singing a very sweet song. And due to that sweet song, the whole place has gone sweet. The whole place has gone melodious. The whole place is full of sweet music. Singest of summer in full-throated ease. So he says that the nightingale is singing in the in summer, and the nightingale is singing with full force. Full-throated ease means the nightingale is singing with full force, and she is singing very easily. So that's the explanation of the first stanza. It's really very important. Whenever you prepare for net exam or your competitive exam, so the first line is really very important. It has been raised in many competitive exam. And similarly, when you prepare for competitive exam, these Greek words, for example, lithi, dried, these are really very important because in competitive exam, they ask the meaning of these Greek words. That what's the meaning of lithi, what's the meaning of dried, that why is nightingale compared to the dried, why there's a description of lithi. So just concentrate on this passage, on this stanza carefully. It's a wonderful stanza. Come to the second stanza. Now, after hearing the Nightingale song, now John Keats, he decides to visit Nightingale's word. Means John Keats, he wants to visit the Nightingale words and he wants to sit with the nightingale in the tree. And that's why John Keats, he says that first of all, he will drink wine. And after drinking wine, he will get intoxicated. And in intoxication, he will be with the nightingale in the forest, sitting on the branch. So first of all, he says that he will drink wine. And with the help of wine, he will reach there in intoxication. He will reach with the nightingale in the forest on the branch. So that's why in the second stanza, John Keats, he talks about, he wants to visit Nightingale's word with wine aid, means with the help of wine. Now, what does he say? Try to understand the second stanza. Oh, for a draught of vintage that hath been cooled long ago in the deep delved earth, tasting of flora and the country green, dance, provincial song, and sunburnt mirth. Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south, full of the true, the blissful hippocrene, with beaded bubbles winking at the brim, and purple-stained mouth, that I might drunk and leave the word unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. Now try to understand this thing. It's second stanza. Now what John Keats says, he says that, oh, for a draught of vintage. Vintage here stands for wine. He wants to drink a glass of wine. He wants to enjoy a glass of wine. Which wine? He says that hath been cooled a long age in the deep delved earth. Here cooled means stored. You all know that the wine is kept in a cool place. And do you know, in foreign countries, the people, they have often cellars. Cellars are built underground. Why? In order to keep wine there. So here in the second line, he is talking about the underground cellars where the wine has been kept. So that's why he says that he wants to drink a wine. Which wine? The wine which has been stored. Long age means for a long time. And do you know, the older the wine is, the better is its taste, the better is its intoxication. And that's why he says that he wants to drink wine. Which wine? He wants to drink the wine that has been stored in the deep delved earth, means in the cellar, in the underground cellar. He says that he wants to drink the wine that has been stored in the underground cellar for a long time. A long age means for a long time. Now he wants to drink which wine? He wants to drink the wine which has been stored in the underground cellar for a long time. Now, what does he says in the next two lines? Tasting of flora and the country green, dance, provincial song, and sunburnt mirth. Now he's talking about a special type of wine. Do you know which type of wine he is talking about? The wine he is talking about, which is found in south of France. He is talking about the special type of wine which is found in the south of France. That's why in the fifth line he says, "Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south." Say here, south stand for south of France. Why? Because south of France during the Romantic age had been very famous place for red wine. So special type of wine was available there. And that area, the south of France, it was full of flora, means there were so many flowers there. That area was full of flowers. That area was green. There was so much greenery in that area. There were so many flowers there. And the people of that area, means south, the people of south of France, they used to dance, they used to sing, and they used to enjoy. So these two lines, tasting of flora and the country green, dance, provincial song, and sunburnt mirth. Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south. Warm south means the wine which is found in south of France. So through these three lines, he wants to say that he wants to taste red wine. He wants to taste a special type of wine which is found in south of France. Why? Because he further says that this area is quite famous for its flora, for its flowers, for its green country, for its dance, for its song, for its enjoyment. Why? Because the people of that area, they dance, they sing song, they enjoy their life. And that area, in that area, there are so many flowers. The countryside is very green. And that's why he says, for a beaker means bottle, full of the warm south. So he says that he wants to drink the wine. He wants to drink the red wine, which is found in the south of France, an area whose people, they enjoy their life, they dance, they sing, they enjoy their life, and that area is full of flowers, and there is a green countryside. Now, what does he says in the next line? Full of the true, the blushful hippocrene. Again, there is a Greek reference. This word is quite important, hippocrene. Now, what is hippocrene? It is mentioned in Greek mythology. Hippocrene is the fountain. It is the sacred fountain of the muses. Muses, do you know? Muses means goddess of poetry. And in Greek mythology, there are 9 goddesses of arts. So Hippocrene is the fountain which comes from the ground, and it was created by the, you can say that, leg of the Pegasus horse. Pegasus is the name of the horse, and this place was dug by the hoof of that horse, and then a fountain came out of the earth, and that fountain is considered the sacred fountain. So hippocrene is a word in Greek mythology. And do you know, the water of that mountain is considered to give inspiration to the poets. And that's why he says, full of the true, the blushful hypocrite. What is the meaning of blush here? Blush, the color of blush is also red. So he is talking about red wine. He says that he that as by drinking the water of, as by drinking the water of hippocrene, a person gets inspiration for arts. Similarly, he says that by taking a red wine, by taking a glass of red wine, what will he feel? He will also get inspiration, and then he will visit the Nightingale's word, or he will be able to write a good poem. So here he is talking about the inspiration which he will get by drinking wine, and he compares the inspiration obtained from wine to the blushful hypocrite. He compares that inspiration to the water which is obtained from the sacred fountain, which is considered to have given inspiration for each and everybody. And that's why he says, full of the true, the blushful hypocrite. What does he says in the next line? With beaded bubbles winking at the brim and purple stained mouth. And he says that he wants to drink a glass of red wine. And what will happen? That at the brim of the bottle, there will be bubbles, and they will be winking. Winking means bursting, means there will be bubbles at the brim of the glass, and those bubbles will be bursting. And he says that after taking that red wine, what will happen? That his mouth also will become red, and purple stained mouth. So his mouth will also become red. So now you can see the sensuousness here. In purple, our eye is being satisfied because there's a red color. And purple stained mouth means when he drinks wine, to our the sense of our taste is being satisfied. And by hearing the nightingale sound, the sense of ear is being satisfied. Flora. In this way, just John Keats, he keeps on satisfying our each and every sense. And what does he says in the next two lines? That I might drink and leave the word unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. Dim means dark. He says that by taking that wine, what will happen? That he will leave this world. Which world? He will leave this materialistic world, and he will go in imagination. So in imagination, he will visit the nightingale's world and leave the word unseen, and with the fade away means run away into the forest dim. He says that by drinking wine, he will be in intoxication, he will go in imagination, and then he will visit the nightingale's world. He will leave this materialistic world. He will find himself where? In the forest, with the nightingale sitting in the tree on the branch. Now, what happens in the next stanza, third stanza? Now, in the third stanza, John Keats, he talks about sorrows and sufferings of the world. He says that this materialistic world is not good to live. It's not fit to live. Why? Because this world is full of so many sorrows and suffering. There is a disease, there is old age, there is a death. Here in this world, nothing is permanent. Each and everything is transitory. For example, beauty is not permanent. Love is not permanent. So in the third stanza, he talks about sorrows and suffering of this world. Now, what does he say? Fade far away, dissolve and quite forget what thou among the leaves has never known. The weariness, the fever, and the fret. Here we are, here, where men sit and hear each other groan, where palsy shakes a few, sad last grey hair, where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies, where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden-eyed despair, where beauty can't keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. Now try to understand. He is talking about the short livedness of this world. that this world is full of sorrows and suffering. What does he say? Fade far away, dissolve and quite forget what thou among the leaves has never known. He tells the nightingale that he wants to go with him and fade far away, dissolve and quite forget. He says that he wants to go with the nightingale in the nightingale's word, and he wants to forget. And he wants to forget. किसको forget करना चाहता है? He wants to forget the sorrows and sufferings of the world. And that's why he says he wants to forget what thou among the leaves has never known. He tells the nightingale that he wants to forget the sorrows and suffering which the nightingale doesn't know. What thou among the leaves has never known. He says that he wants to go with the nightingale in the nightingale words, in the nightingale's word, and he wants to forget the sorrows and suffering which the nightingale never knows. And what does he says in the next two lines? The weariness, the fever, and the fret. Here means the sorrows and suffering of the world. That's the meaning of this line. He says that this world is full of sorrows and sufferings. And he says, well, here where men sit and hear each other groan. Groan means grief. That in this world, each and everybody is sad, each and everybody is suffering from sorrows and suffering. And that's why he says that in this world, people meet and they share each other griefs. Here, where men sit and hear each other grief, he said that in this world, each and everybody is suffering. And that's why whenever they meet, they share each other griefs. So he is talking about sorrows and suffering. What does he say? Where apology shakes a few, sad last gray hair. Apology is a type of disease in which the complete body starts shaking. So here he is talking about the disease. In this word, people they become prey to many diseases. बहुत सारी बीमारियां हो जाती हैं. That's why he says where policy shakes a few. Some people they catch policy. Yeah, policy shakes some people means some people they catch this disease, and what happens then their complete body it starts shaking. Sad last gray hair. He says that at last there's the old age. Now, where apology shakes a few, he is talking about the disease. Sad last gray hair, he is talking about the old age. And then he says that people, they become old. And they lost their gray hair. कहते हैं ना, last gray hair. So he says that the people, they grow old also. So in the first line, he talks about sorrows and suffering. Then he talks about the disease, that this world is full of disease. And then he talks about the old age, that this world is also full of old age, means each and every person has to pass through this stage of life, and that is old age. And each and everybody has to suffer some kind of disease also. And each and everybody's life is full of sorrows and suffering. And what does he says in the next line? Where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies. Now in the fourth line, he is talking about his brother Tom, not Jim, Tom. Why? Because his brother Tom died to TB, died due to tuberculosis. And that's why he says, where youth grows pale, spectre thin means completely thin and dies. He says that in this world, the people, means the young people, they catch TB, and due to TB, they become extremely thin. They become thin like a spectre, and at last they die. So here, through the fourth line, he's talking about the death of his brother Tom. So these four lines are really very important. You must remember. These lines are asked in many competitive exams. The weariness, the fever, and the fret. Here, where men sit and hear each other groan. Where apology shakes a few, sad last gray hair. Where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies. These four lines are really very important. Now, what does he say? Where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden-eyed despair. He says that in this world, thinking is suffering. He says that in this world, to think is to suffer. So he says that in this world, there are so many sorrows and suffering, that in this world, to think is to suffer. Because whenever we think, we are, you can say that we encounter a trouble, we encounter a problem, and that's why he says that in this word, even thinking is to encounter sorrow. And that's why he says, what does he says? Where beauty can't keep her lustrous eyes. Lustrous means beautiful. He says in this word, even beauty is not permanent. Beauty is short-lived. Why? Because a person loses the beauty with the passage of time. And that's why he says, where beauty can't keep her lustrous eyes means a person doesn't remain beautiful throughout his or her life. A person loses his or her beauty with the passage of time. He says, even in this world, beauty is not permanent, it is short-lived. And what does he say in the last? What does he say in the last line? On new love, pine at them beyond tomorrow. Here, them stand for eyes. So he says that in this world, even love is not permanent. Love is also temporary. And that's why he says that doesn't love doesn't survive for a long time. कहते हैं ना, beyond tomorrow means the love ends tomorrow. He says that in this world, even love is not permanent. It is also short-lived. It is also temporary, and the love also disappears with the passage of time. So through this stanza, he talks about the sorrows and sufferings of the world. Now, what does he say in the next stanza? Actually, now, earlier in the second stanza, John Keats, he was thinking to visit the Nightingale's world with the help of wine. But in the fourth stanza, he rejects that. He rejects that idea, and he says that he will visit the Nightingale's world not with the help of wine, but with the help of imagination. So, what does he say? Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his bards, but on the viewless wings of poesy. Bacchus again is a Greek term. In Greek mythology, Bacchus is a god, is god of wine, because earlier he was talking about wine, and his bards means his servants. So he says, away, away, for I will fly to thee, I will come to thee. Not charioted means not helped by Bacchus and his bards, but on the viewless wings of poesy. Viewless means invisible. Here, poesy stands for imagination. You know that imagination is not visible, it is invisible. And that's why he used the word viewless wings of poesy. Now he tells the Nightingale that he will visit his world not with the help of wine, but with the help of imagination. So that's the meaning of these three lines. Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted, not with the help of Bacchus and his servants, but with the help of imagination. He says that he will visit his world not with the help of wine, but with the help of imagination. Now, what does he say in the next line? Though the dull brain perplexes and retards, although with thee tender is the night. Although already with thee. What does he says? That he decides to visit the Nightingale's world with the help of imagination. But he says that his brain is creating problem. His brain is stopping him. Retards means puts a barrier, means his brain is denying. His brain is denying this visit to Nightingale's world. The brain is saying that you should not visit the Nightingale's world. The brain is stopping his flight to Nightingale. Although the dull brain perplexes means confuses, and retards means takes me back. He says that though the brain is trying to stop his visit to Nightingale's word, but he says already with thee. But he tells the Nightingale that now I have come in your word, and I am sitting with you. Where? In the forest, in the tree, on the branch. So then poets, he visits the Nightingale's word, and now he is sitting there with the Nightingale in the trees. Now he describes the night scene. What does he say? Tender is the night, and happily the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry fays. Fays means servants, and starry, star. Now, what does he says? He describes the sky. He describes the night scene. What does he says? Tender is the night, and happily the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry face. He says the night is tender, there's a softness in the night, and then he says that the sky is clear and the moon is shining brightly in the sky, and he calls the moon as queen. He says that the moon is shining brightly in the sky, and the moon is looking like moon is looking like a queen who is sitting on her throne. And he also tells that the moon is surrounded by, clustered around means surrounded by, and he tells that the moon is surrounded by the stars. So he says, he presents a very beautiful scene of the night, that the sky is clear, the moon is shining brightly in the sky, and it is looking as if moon is a queen who is sitting on her throne, and around the moon there are stars all around. But he says, now he comes to the forest. What does he say? But here there's no light. Say, what from heaven is with the breezes blown through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. Here, verdurous means dark. Glooms here means stands for the trees or forest. And winding moji ways. Moji, do you know the word mossy has come from the word moss. So he says, but in the forest there's no light. But here there's no light. He says that now the forest in which he is sitting with the nightingale, there's no light. He says that there's no light except the rays of moon, except the rays of moon which are entering the forest and from heaven. Heaven stands for sky. He says that in this forest there's no light except the light which is coming from the sky, means except the rays of the moon which are coming from the sky. How? Through dark forest, dark trees, and winding ways. Winding means zigzag ways. So he says that in the forest there's no light, there's only a dim light which is coming from the sky, and it is coming through dark and gloomy forest and trees and winding ways. Now, what happens in the fifth stanza? Now, in the fifth stanza, John Keats, he describes the various flowers grown in the forest. So he talks about the various flowers which are grown in the forest, and in this way, Keats, he enjoys flora, he enjoys the various flowers, he enjoys the beauty of nature in this fifth stanza by describing them. Though he says that there is a darkness in the forest and he's not able to see the various flowers, various trees, various plants, but still he says that he can guess them. How? He can guess them by their fragrance. He can guess them by coming to know the month, because we have already talked about that this complete poem is set in summer, so he's quite familiar with this month, and he knows very well that in this month which types of flowers are grown or bloomed, and that's why, though there's a darkness, he's not able to see the various plants, the various flowers, the various trees, but still he can guess them. What does he say? I can't see what flowers are at my feet, nor what soft incense hangs upon the bough. Incense here stands for fragrant. Hang stands for plants or flowers. Upon the bow stands for branches. Now he says that as there's a darkness, so he's not able to see what types of flowers have grown under the tree and what types of fragrant plants or fragrant flowers are on the branches. Means he says that as there's a darkness, so he's not able to see the flowers grown in the forest or the flowers grown under the tree where he is sitting with the nightingale. He says that I am not able to see those flowers, fragrant flowers. But he says, but in embalmed darkness, what is the meaning of embalmed here? Embalmed stands for fragrant. But there is fragrance all around. No doubt there's a darkness, but he says that the darkness is also fragrant. Why? Because there are so many flowers, and so many flowers, they are releasing sweet fragrance, and due to that fragrance, even the darkness is full of fragrance. But in embalmed darkness, guess each sweet, where with the seasonable month indoors. He says that no doubt there's a darkness, is not able to see, but he says that even in darkness he can guess each and every flower. Sweet means each and every flower. Each and every flower he can guess which can be blown in this seasonable month. And he is talking about summer, and that's why he says that he can guess which types of flowers are grown in the forest at this very time or in this very month, though nothing is visible to him. Now, what does he says? We were talking here. Now he talks about the various types of flowers, various types of fruits he guesses while sitting with the nightingale in the forest. He says, the grass, the thicket, and the fruit tree wild, white hawthorn and pastel eglantine. Now he is guessing the types of flowers. He says that in the forest, what is there? There's the grass, there's the thicket, that is type of bush. He also says that in the forest, fruit, there are fruit tree, and he guesses them. Then he talks about special type of shrub, which belongs to the rose flower. So he says that in the forest there's a white hawthorn, means this type of plant is there on which white flowers have bloomed, and then pastel eglantine, that is also a type of tree and flower. So he talks about the various flowers, various fruits which have grown in the forest in the month of summer. Now next line he says, fast fading violets covered up in leaves. And he says that in the forest, violets have also grown and they have faded. Faded means they have died. And now they have died, they have fallen down, and that's why they are covered up in leaves. And now they are falling on the ground and they are covered in leaves. So he says in the forest, violets have also grown, have also bloomed, but they have faded, they have fallen down, and now they are covered in leaves. And mid May's eldest child, the coming musk rose. Musk rose means a fragrant rose, full of dewy wine, the murmurous haunt of flies on summer eves. So what does he says? That he says that in the forest, what fragrant rose has also grown, and mid May's eldest child, the coming musk rose. He says that in the forest, fragrant rose has also grown. And do you know, he says that the fragrance of that rose is making him intoxicated as by drinking wine. कहते हैं ना, full of dewy wine. So he compares the fragrance of the rose to the wine. He says that by just smelling that fragrance, he is feeling intoxicated as a person feels intoxicated by consuming wine, full of dewy wine. And he also finds that there are also flies in the forest because it's a summer. He says the murmurous haunt of flies on summer eves. He says that in the forest there are also flies and they are producing murmuring sound. So in this way, in this stanza, John Keats, he talks about the various flora grown in the forest in night or in darkness. Now, when in the next stanza, John Keats, he expresses his desire to die at this very moment. But actually, John Keats, he felt fear of painful death. And that's why John Keats, he wanted to die a painless death. And that's why John Keats, he expresses his desire to die now. He says that he has often thought of death, and he says that he has written many poems about death also. In his many poems, he has talked about death. And now he says that when the nightingale is singing a sweet song, and that sweet song is pouring in his ear, so he says that now death not be so painful, and that's why he expresses his desire to die at this very moment. Why? Because he thinks that now death be not so much painful. So what does he say? Darkening I listen, and for many a time I have been half in love with easeful death, called him soft names in many a mused rhyme, to take into the air my quiet breath. No, now more than ever seems it rich to die, to seize upon the midnight with no pain. With thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy, still wouldest thou sing, and I have ears in vain. To the high requiem become a sword. Now, what does he says? Darkening I listen. He says that in the darkness he is listening. He is listening. What is he is listening? He is listening the nightingale's song. That's why he says, darkening I listen. He says, and then the darkness he is listening the nightingale's song. And he says, for many a time I have been half in love with easeful death. He wants to say that he has thought about painless death many times. He says that he wanted to die a painless death, an easy death, and that's why he has thought about painless death many times. For many a time, I have been half in love with easeful death. He says that he has thought many times of painful death. He wanted to die a painless death. And that's why he says, called him soft name in many a mused rhyme. Mused rhyme means poems. And he says that he has talked about death by using soft names in many of his poems. And he says that he has talked about painless death. He has talked about death in many of his poems. Why? Because he wanted to die a painless death. What does he say? To take into air my quiet breath means he wanted to die what? A painless death, quiet death. Quiet means without making sound. So John Keats, in the first four lines, he says that he had always desired to die a painless death, and that's why he was obsessed with painless death, and he has written about death in many of his poems. And now he says that this is the suitable time to die when the nightingale is singing such a sweet song. So he says that now death will not be so painful. And that's why he says, now more than ever seems it rich to die. To cease means to stop upon the midnight with no pain. While thou means you, art means are. While thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad means your song. You are putting your song you are putting your soul in the song. You are singing such a sweet song in such an ecstasy. Ecstasy means overjoy. What is the meaning of these full lines? He says that now more than ever seem its risk to die, to seize upon the midnight with no pain. He says that now it seems more appropriate for him to die a painless death. He says that now it seems proper to die a painless death. Why? Because when he is hearing his sweet sound, when he is hearing his sweet sound, when the sweet sound of the nightingale is pouring in his ear, he thinks that now his death will not be so painful, it will be painless. That's the meaning of these four lines. Now, what does he says? And now he comes to talk about the immortality, the theme of immortality. Because I told you that the main theme of this poem is the permanence of art and temporariness of human life and beauty. Now he talks about the permanence of art. Here, art stands for the Nightingale's song. Actually, in this poem, John Keats is not talking about a particular nightingale. He is talking about the nightingale song. According to him, the nightingale song is a permanent. It has continued since times immemorial. It has continued since the creation of the earth, and it will continue till the world's end, or till the earth's end, or till the doomsday. Now, what does he says? Still wouldest thou sing. He says that even if he dies, but the nightingale song will continue. Still wouldest thou sing. He says that even if he dies, the nightingale song will continue, and I have ears in vain. He says that if he dies, the nightingale song will continue. So, though his dead body will have ears, but those ears, they will be useless. Why? Because he will not have the brain to enjoy the music. And that's why he says, "Na, still wouldest thou sing, I have ears in vain." He says that when he dies, even if he dies, so the nightingale song will continue, and his ears, they will become useless. Why? Because he will have no brain to enjoy the music. He says, "To thy high requiem become a sword." A requiem is a sad song which is sung on the death of a person in the church. So he says, "To thy high requiem become a sword." He says that the nightingale is singing a sweet song, but he says that his sweet song, it become useless. It will become useless. Why? Because his body will become a sword. Sword means inanimate object, non-living object. He says that his song, it will, he means his sweet song, his he compares the nightingale song to requiem. Requiem means a sad song which is sung on the death of a person. He says that his sweet song, no doubt, it is high requiem, it is of high value, but it will become useless. Why? Because his body will become lifeless. So that's Keats' desire to die an easy death. Now, what happens in the next stanza? In the next stanza, John Keats, he talks about permanence of nightingale song. He says that the nightingale song is permanent. It has continued since times immemorial, and it will continue in future also. Nobody can stop the nightingale song. Now, what does he says? "Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. No hungry generation tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. Perhaps the self same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth when sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn. The same that oft times hath charmed magic casements opening on the foam of perilous seas in fairy lands forlorn." Now try to understand. What does he say? Now he calls the nightingale immortal bird. Immortal means the bird which never dies. He says that the nightingale is immortal. Again, don't mistake to think that he's talking about a nightingale. No, he's talking about the nightingale song. So he calls the song of the nightingale immortal. He says, "Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird." He says that the song of the nightingale is immortal, it never dies. "No hungry generation tread thee down," means no future generation can stop, can kill the nightingale song. Nightingale song will continue. Since times immemorial, it has continued, and it will continue in future. "No hungry generation tread thee down." Here the word hungry generation, hungry generation stands for the future generation. And why do you know hungry generation have, why does John Keats use the phrase hungry generation? Hungry generation stands for the future generation. Do you know future generation take the place of their parents? In this way, the word continues. The parents die, then their children come up, then they become parents, and then their children are born. So in this way, their place are taken by their children. And that's why no hungry generation, that's why the word hungry has been used, because the future generation, they take the place of their parents. So no hungry generation tread thee down. He says that no future generation can stop the Nightingale song. It will continue in future also. Now, what does he says? He gives some ancient example. He gives example from the ancient time in order to prove that the Nightingale song has continued since times immemorial. Now, what does he says? The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. He says that the song he is hearing this night, the same song was heard in ancient days by whom? The Greek emperor and his clown. Clown, do you know? Clown means joker, a person who is there to entertain the king. So he says that the song he is hearing this very night, it was heard in ancient time by emperor and his clown or his servant. So he's giving examples from the past. Now, do you know John Keats? He gives very remote example. He gives example from the Bible. He gives example. You can say that a very remote example. He gives example from the Bible. He gives the example of Ruth. The story of Ruth I will talk about. Then he says, perhaps the self same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth, when sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn. Now try to understand these three lines. In these three lines, there's the story of Ruth. So Ruth was a lady who fell in love with a man and she married him. And after some time that her husband died. And later on, actually her husband, he belonged to a different country. So Ruth had a mother-in-law. So when her husband died, so Ruth, she decided to accompany her mother-in-law to her mother-in-law's country. Means Ruth, she leaves her own country, her father, her mother, her relatives, and she comes with her mother-in-law to a foreign country. Now, in that foreign country, Ruth is not accepted by the people. And that's why Ruth is still very dedicated to her mother-in-law. She promises her mother-in-law that she will never leave her till her death. And that's why when she comes to her mother-in-law's country, so she works really very hard to support the family. No doubt, she also feels homesickness. She has memories of her parents, so that's why she feels very sad. And when Ruth, she hears the Nightingale song, so what does he says? Perhaps the self same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth, when sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn. Alien, do you know? Foreign. And corn here stand for cornfield, because Ruth, she starts working in the cornfield, and that's why the word is alien corn. She starts working in the cornfield. So he says that the song he is hearing this night, the same song was heard by Ruth. He says that the same song was heard in Ruth when Ruth was standing in the cornfield in a foreign country. When the Ruth was standing all alone in the cornfield in a foreign country, and when she was feeling homesickness. What is the meaning of homesickness? When a person remembers her family, her country. So when Ruth was remembering her parents, when she was feeling homesickness, Ruth was standing where? In the cornfields in the foreign country. And he said that after listening the Nightingale's song, after means she stood in tears amid the alien corn. Means at that time Ruth was sad, she was weeping. Why? Because she was feeling homesickness, she was remembering her parents, she was in a foreign country, and she was standing in the cornfield. He says the same song was heard by the sad Ruth when the Ruth was standing in a foreign in the cornfield in the foreign country, and she was weeping, she was feeling homesickness. Now, what does he says in the next three line? Now, in the next three line, he gets lost in the world of imagination. The first two examples, they are from history. But now the next example, when he talks about the Nightingale words, he gets lost in the world of imagination. So what does he says? The same that oft times hath charmed magic casement. Casement means windows, opening on the form of perilous sea. Perilous means dangerous sea. In fairy lands fall on. Fairy lands means lands of fairies, pariyon ka desh. So here he is talking. Now John Keats, he gets lost in imagination, and now in imagination he imagines a land of fairies where the fairies lives, and he says that the same that oft times have charmed magic casement. Casement means windows, magical windows, opening on the form of perilous sea in fairy lands forlorn. He says that the same song was heard where? In the fairyland. And due to that song made the magic windows to open. By hearing the Nightingale song, the magic windows of the ship were opened. Here he is talking about the ship. Casement here stands for windows of the ship. He says that by hearing the Nightingale songs, so windows of the ships were opened, and opened, that ship was in dangerous sea. So he says that the same song was heard in fairyland, and by hearing that song, the windows of the ships were opened and the ship was in dangerous sea. So in this way, he says that the Nightingale song is permanent because it has continued since times immemorial. Now the word forlorn is very important. What is the meaning of forlorn? Forlorn means lonely. So when John Keats, he uses this word forlorn, so John Keats, he comes back into reality. Earlier, now, so far, John Keats was living in imagination. He was talking in imagination. And now he comes back into reality. And that's why he used the word forlorn. Forlorn means lonely. And he comes back into reality. He says, forlorn, the very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my soul self. Now, when he uses the word forlorn, so the word forlorn, it acts like a bell. And sometimes it happens with us that we are having a sweet dream, and all of a sudden the alarm bells. And as the alarm bells, so we come back into reality. Our dream is shattered. So the same is happening with John Keats. So as he hears the word forlorn, and that's why he compares the word forlorn to a bell. He says, forlorn, the very word is like a bell to toll me back from thee to my soul self. Means when he uses the word forlorn, when he hears the word forlorn, lonely, so he comes back into reality. And that's why he compares the word fallen to a bell, as a bell makes us wake up from our sweet dreams. Similarly, the word forlorn, it makes the poet come back into reality, to toll me back from thee to my soul self. Now, what does he say? He uses the French word adieu. What is the meaning of adieu? Adieu means goodbye. And now he uses the word adieu. What does he say? Adieu. The fancy can't cheat us so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Elf means a fairy. Now he talks about imagination. Fancy means imagination. He says that imagination can't cheat us. Means imagination can't keep us out of thought for a long time. We can remain in imagination only for a short time, but ultimately we are to come back to reality. And that's why through these two lines, adieu, the fancy can't cheat us so well as she is famed to do, as she is famous to do, deceiving elf. Through these lines, John Keats, he gives a wonderful moral lesson that we should accept reality as it is. We should accept life as it is. We should not get lost in imagination. And that's why he says, adieu, the fancy can't cheat us so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Elf means fairy, means he calls imagination a deceiving fairy. He says that fancy can't keep, no doubt, imagination is very famous, that imagination can lead us to good thoughts and it can keep us out of thought. It can keep us out this troubled world. But he says this is not reality, because imagination can't keep us out of this troubled world for a long time. Ultimately, we are to return to reality. And that's why he calls fancy a deceiving fairy. Now, what does he say in the next two lines? Adieu, adieu, the plaintive anthem fades, past the near widows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now it's buried deep in the next valley glades. And now what happens? That he says, bye bye, adieu, goodbye, goodbye. Actually, what happens, that the song of the nightingale, he was hearing that now that nightingale, it flies away. So when that nightingale flies away, so he is not able to hear the nightingale song. And that's why I say, adieu, adieu. The plaintive anthem fades. Plaintive means sad. Anthem here stands for the song of the nightingale. Fades. Fades means he's not able to hear now the nightingale song, because the nightingale has gone. It has flown away. Adieu, adieu, the plaintive anthem fades, past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now it's buried deep in the next valley glades. He says that nightingale has flown away from the nearby meadows where the nightingale was sitting and the poet was listening the sweet song. He says that the nightingale has flown away from the near meadows. Now the nightingale has crossed the stream. The nightingale has crossed the river, and now the nightingale has gone up the hillside, and now the nightingale has reached in the next valley, because the nightingale has flown away, and that's why now the poet is not able to hear the sweet song of the nightingale. So it has flown away from the meadows where it was, where she was sitting, and then she has crossed the river. It has gone up the hill, and now it has gone the next valley. And these are the two last lines. What does he say? Was it a vision or a waking dream? Fled is the music. Do I wake or sleep? Means now the nightingale has gone, the song of the nightingale has gone, and that's why he comes into reality, and he feels as if he was having a dream while waking up. Was it a vision or a waking dream? Vision means you can say that imagination. He says whether it happened with him in reality or was he in a dream. That's why he says, was it a vision or a waking dream? So he asks a question. He doesn't believe that he experienced all this. And that's why he says, whether it was reality or it was just a dream. Flood is that music. He says that music has gone. Do I wake or sleep? Whether I am waking or sleeping. Because he is not able to believe whether he has experienced all this. So with this poem ends. Ode to a Nightingale, which is an excellent poem written by John Keats. I hope that you will be able to understand this poem.